I was sitting on the jetty of the small port of Obernon, near the village of Solly, gazing in awe as Antibes dissolved into the golden haze of sunset. Never before had I witnessed anything so enchanting, so profoundly beautiful. The town, enclosed by the stern ramparts built by Vauban, jutted into the sea like a wedge, nestled in the heart of a vast bay, across which lay the city of Nice. Mighty waves crashed against the base of the walls, wrapping them in lace-like foam, while the houses, stacked one atop another, climbed toward the towers that pierced the sky like the twin horns of an ancient helmet. These towers stood out against the milky whiteness of the Alps, a distant, majestic wall of snow that sealed off the horizon. Between the white foam at the foot of the walls and the white snow at the edge of the heavens, against the bluish backdrop of the mountain spurs, the town shimmered. The rays of the setting sun danced across the pyramid of houses with russet roofs, houses that were white too, but under this light took on the most whimsical hues. Even the sky above the Alps seemed a pale, bleached blue, as if drained of color by the snow. Here and there, silvery clouds hovered above the WN peaks. On the far side of the bay, Nice clung to the water like a white thread stretched between sea and mountains. Two large Latin sails, driven by a fresh breeze, skimmed the waves as if gliding. I watched, spellbound. Such rare, stirring scenes pierce the soul and remain there, like memories of happiness. One lives, thinks, suffers, is moved, and loves with the eyes. Those who feel through sight, who can contemplate the animate and the inanimate, experience a pleasure as keen and profound as that of someone with a sensitive ear, whose soul is stirred by music. I turned to my companion, Monsieur Martini, a true son of the South, and said, "I don't believe I've ever seen such a rare spectacle. I've seen Mont Saint-Michel rise from the sands at dawn, a granite jewel. I've seen Lake Ryan-Shergi in the Sahara shimmer under a moon as bright as our sun, stretching 50 kilometers, with white vapor rising above it like a milky cloud. I've seen the fantastical sulfur crater of Vulcanello on the Lipari Islands, a giant flower, yellow and smoking, blooming from the sea on a volcanic stem. But nothing has struck me more deeply than Antibes against the Alps in the light of sunset. And for some reason, ancient images won't leave me be lines from Homer surface in my memory. Before me stands a city of the East, a city from the Odyssey, Troy, though Troy lay far from the sea." Martini pulled a guidebook by Sarti from his pocket and read aloud. The city was founded by Phocians from Marseille around the year 340 before the birth of Christ. They named it Antipolis, the city opposite, for it lies directly across from Nice, another colony of Marseille. Later, under Roman rule, Antibes became a municipium, and its inhabitants were granted Roman citizenship. From a martial epigram, we know that in his time, he was about to continue, but I interrupted. "I don't care what it once was. I'm telling you, before me stands a city from the Odyssey. What does it matter whether it's an Asian or European shore? Cities on both sides of the Mediterranean shared a likeness. But none on the southern coast awakens in me such vivid memories of heroic times." I turned, hearing footsteps. A tall, dark-haired woman was walking along the road that followed the sea toward the Cape. Martini whispered, emphasizing the final syllable. "That's Madame Parisse." Heard of her? No, I hadn't. But that casually spoken name, the name of the Trojan shepherd, fed my imagination anew. I asked, "Who is she?" He was surprised I didn't know her story. I assured him I'd heard nothing, and kept watching the woman, who walked on without noticing us, lost in thought. She moved slowly, with a stately grace, perhaps just as women of antiquity once walked. She was about 35, and still beautiful, strikingly so, though a touch fuller than in youth. Here is what Martini told me. They understood that they loved each other, though their feelings had never erupted into passion or crude intimacy. She would never have gone beyond those tender, almost platonic relations, but not he. For him, it was not enough. Day by day, he grew more insistent, urging her to yield to his fervent desire. She resisted, unwilling, seemingly resolute in her decision to remain steadfast. But one evening, as if by chance, she said, "My husband has gone to Marseille. He'll be there for 4 days." Jean de Carmelin fell to his knees, begging her to open the door to him that very night, around 11. But she refused to listen, feigned indignation, and walked away. The Major spent the evening in a dark mood, and by dawn was already striding through the fortress with a grim expression, inspecting platoon after platoon, from the musicians to the training unit. On officers and soldiers alike, reprimands rained down like stones hurled into a crowd. But when he returned for breakfast, he found a sealed envelope tucked beneath his napkin. Inside was a brief note, "Tonight at 10. For no apparent reason, he tipped the waiter 5 francs. The day dragged on unbearably. He spent part of it grooming himself, dousing his uniform with generous sprays of cologne. At dinner, another envelope was handed to him. Inside, a telegram. "Darling, business is settled. Returning tonight on the 9 o'clock train. Parisse." The Major cursed so loudly that the waiter dropped the soup tureen. What now? He wanted her to be his that very night, no matter the cost. And he resolved to make it happen at any price, even if it meant arresting her husband. A wild idea flashed through his mind. He ordered paper and wrote, "Madam, he will not return tonight, I swear to you. I shall be there at 10, as agreed. Fear nothing, I take full responsibility. Trust the honor of an officer. Jean de Carmelin." He sent the letter and dined calmly. Around 8 o'clock, he summoned Captain Gribois, his second-in-command, and, twisting the crumpled telegram in his hand, said, "Captain, I've received a telegram of a peculiar nature, the contents of which I cannot disclose. Immediately order all city gates closed and guarded. No one, do you hear me? No one is to enter or leave until 6 in the morning. Dispatch patrols through the streets, and instruct the townspeople to remain indoors from 9 o'clock onward. Anyone found outside after that hour is to be escorted home, military. If your men encounter me tonight, they are to withdraw at once, without showing any sign of recognition. Understood?" "Yes, Major. You are responsible for executing this order." "Yes, Major. Would you care for a glass of Chartreuse?" "Gladly, Major." They clinked glasses, drank the yellow liqueur, and Captain Gribois departed. The Marseille train arrived precisely at 9. 2 passengers stepped onto the platform, the tall, gaunt Monsieur Sarib, a dealer in Provençal oil, and the short, stout Monsieur Parisse. They collected their valises and set off toward the town, just a kilometre away. But at the portside gate, the sentries crossed their bayonets and ordered them to turn back. Bewildered and embarrassed, they stepped aside to confer. After a brief discussion, they returned hesitantly and identified themselves. But the soldiers, evidently under strict orders, threatened to open fire. Terrified, the travelers fled, abandoning their luggage to lighten their escape. They circled the fortress and approached the gate on the road to Cannes. But it too was locked, guarded by a stern watch. Sarib and Parisse, being sensible men, did not insist. They returned to the station, where, after sunset, the world beyond the walls felt perilous. The night attendant, groggy and confused, allowed them to wait in the passenger lounge. There they sat side by side on a green velvet sofa, in darkness, too frightened even to think of sleep. The night felt endless. Around 6:30, they learned the gates had reopened. They hurried into town, but their valises were gone. Still somewhat timid, they passed through the city gates, where Major de Carmelin, his mustache curled with flair, approached them with a sly expression to conduct the inquiry himself. He bowed politely, apologizing for the inconvenience. But, he explained, orders were orders. The town was abuzz. Some whispered of a surprise Italian attack, others of the landing of Napoleon III's son, and still others suspected an Orleanist conspiracy. The truth emerged later. Major de Carmelin's battalion had been sent far away, and the major himself was severely reprimanded. Martini finished his tale. Madame Parisse was returning from her walk. She passed by with stately grace, her gaze fixed on the Alps, whose peaks blushed in the last light of the sun. I felt the urge to bow to this sorrowful, forsaken woman who, perhaps, still remembers that distant night of love and the daring man who, for a single kiss, imposed martial law on a city and ruined his career. He has likely forgotten her now and perhaps, after a drink or two, recounts the episode as a bold, bittersweet jest. Did they ever meet again? Does she still love him? I thought, here is a modern love story, absurd and yet heroic. To sing of this Helen and her Menelaus, one would need a Homer with the soul of Paul de Kock. And her hero, he was brave, reckless, handsome, strong as Achilles, and perhaps more cunning than Odysseus.